is the writer who argued that black people, in America certainly, live the estrangement that science fiction writers kind of talk about. All the stories about alien abduction, all the stories about alien spaceships taking subjects from one planet and taking them to another, genetically transforming them. Greg is kind of recasting American history in the light of science fiction and saying, well look, all those things that you read about alien abduction and genetic transformation, they already happened. How much more alien do you think it gets? Then entire mass populations moved and genetically altered, entire status moved, forcibly dematerialized. It doesn't really get much more alien than that.
The first touch with sci-fi is when the slaves were using drums to communicate over the distance. So the slave owners would institute reforms that the slaves were no longer allowed to play certain rhythms, if at all. And they weren't allowed to speak even their own languages. And they had to learn the slave master's language, which is English in Jamaica or the States, or Spanish or Portuguese. But there was always a sense of a displacement of the original code, of the language and drums with the new code, or the downloaded new information, downloaded into the cortex, whatever.
Most science fiction tales dramatically deal with how the individual is going to contend with these alienating, dislocating societies and circumstances. And that pretty much sums up, the mass experience of black people, within the post-slavery 20th century world.
Rumor has it that before Robert Johnson made his deal with the devil at the crossroads, he couldn't play to save his life. He sold his soul. In return, he got a secret of the blues. Our thief from the future gives up the right to belong in his time in order to come to our time to find the mothership connection. The thief becomes an angel. Angel of history. The later thief can visit the old world and the new, but he cannot be a part of either. He doesn't know this is his problem, but when he makes his last trip to Africa, he will.
In the 50s and 60s, there was a young writer who came along called Samuel R. Delany, and he's like a bohemian black gay figure who introduced a lot of different black and native Indian characters into science fiction, and his key book is Dahlgren, and that's a key book for black science fiction because that's the first time that black characters in science fiction aren't merely protagonists, but as it were, change the entire terms of how science fiction is written.